Welcome to TheGaGG.com. I'm Luke Stevens, your head gun and gear guy. This episode is about cleaning your Glock. Cleaning a gun is a basic skill that any person who's going to shoot or use guns needs to have. Cleaning a gun, make sure that your gun is safe to fire, that there's no debris, there's no broken parts. It ensures that your gun's life expectancy will be the best that you can get, and it maintains the gun in a proper working order in general. Today, we've already field stripped our Glock, and we're going to learn how to properly clean it. Now, Glocks are really easy to clean. If you remember from our assembly and disassembly, we only have basically 4 parts that we have to work with here when we field strip it. The frame or receiver, the recoil spring, the barrel, and your wonderful slide. Aside from that, if you have magazines that have gotten dirty from use, then you can clean those as well. We won't get into that today. We'll actually have a separate video on disassembling your magazines and learning how to properly maintain them. It's a little bit of a kind of intermediate skill. We'll probably learn it in the 101 series. So let's get started cleaning our Glock. Now, the tools that you're going to need to clean your Glock are pretty simple. I have an array of different oils and cleaning solvents that we're going to use today. In this jar right here, it's unlabeled, is actually just Hoppy's number 9. Here's some Hoppy's gun oil. Here's a general universal gun lube. It's a lube. And then we have some rim oil wipes. You can pick your own choices here. These are ones that I find, are easy to get, easy to keep in stock, and they clean guns pretty good. Aside from that, you need your nylon brush. I found this one at the local hardware store. It's a handy dandy little brush for cleaning guns. You got your normal kind of brush bristles here, but then you've got this little small set that you can use to get down in nice, neat little places without having to jam that full set of brush hairs down in there. You may need a long Q-tip like this. You can use normal Q-tips. I buy these off of Amazon.com in packs of 50 or 100. I don't know how many they come to a pack, but it's a big bulk pack. These are nice. A lot of purposes you can use these for. Sometimes if you got a piece of debris that you're trying to get out, it's nice to have that soft wood end to work down in there. Of course, we're going to use the Q-tip end of it when we're cleaning. And then you need a cleaning rod. I actually have a brass brush on this. Glock provides you with a nylon brush. There's a whole lot of religious theory around brass or nylon. I'm not going to get into that. Brass will work fine. And then a few patches. Now, a quick note on the patches here, okay? You can go to the store and you can buy those packs of 500, 650 patches. When you do the numbers on them, it's pretty expensive. Me, personally, I get my old t-shirts and I just cut them up. And I cut them up into squares. This actually is a square cut in half. And then I take those squares and cut them down to whatever I'm going to need. With a 9mm, this size is kind of nice for a lot of different purposes. So I'm going to use those today. Now let's start with cleaning this Glock. The first thing I generally do is I take my frame and I want to inspect it. Now, given that your knowledge may be limited on Glocks, there's not a lot of things that you may know about the inside of your Glock. But after you take it apart a few times, you'll know what things are supposed to look like. And if they look weird, they may be weird. So that may be a sign that you need to stop, inspect your gun a little bit closer, or take it to a qualified gunsmith and inspect it. I generally, for the lower frame part, just take a brush through any and all of these areas, make sure that they're free of debris. With this size brush, I can actually come up through and clean some of the magazine well here as well. Get any dirt out. I can use the small brush end to brush around and make sure that it's down in there. Now that's assuming that the gun is relatively dry like this and it doesn't have a lot of lube on it or oil. If you've heavily oiled your gun, you may need to take something like a Hoppy's or another cleaning solvent to dry that gun off so that debris is going to come loose. Otherwise, that's just going to gunk up in there. If you need to do that, just take a normal patch, soak it in whatever solvent you want. And this is where this free end of this Q-tip, wipe it over, or if you've got a little spray bottle like this, you can just spray it down nice and good. And then clean it all out. Get it all out. Work all the little crevices to make sure that the cleaning solvent and oil that you put in there is out. Work it down in there. Get it all around until it relatively looks dry. And then you return back to this procedure. Make sure you take a good scrubbing to this, not real hard in certain areas where you see kind of functional parts, but just run it up through there nice and neat. Get all the free dirt, grime, loose stuff out. I generally also take just a little rub up through there. If you look at this, the main areas of friction on this part of the Glock are going to be your slide rails, which are these 4 components here. The locking bar, this area back here that kind of looks like a cross, and that's actually called the crucible, and then your basic trigger harness here mechanism. That's where everything is catching, grabbing, moving, sliding across. And those areas you need to pay a little bit of attention to and make sure you don't have buildup or gunk. Glocks on the inside are nice and silver with a black contrast to that plastic. It's pretty easy to tell if something's beginning to wear or look funky. That's your lower frame. Next, your spring. Now, again, if you run your Glock relatively dry, cleaning a spring should just be as simple as taking your brush, brushing it out really good. If it's a little bit of gunky, again, you might spray a little bit of hoppies or other type solvent on there, and then brush it out and let it dry off. If you feel like there's something down in the rings down here, you can take your free end and, you know, try to work it out, or take a tissue or cleaning and work it out and get it out of there. But in general, your spring should be fairly clear. This guide rod should be fairly clean. I haven't ever really had to do a lot of work on these, and basically these things run till failure. Now the barrel is something that you have to take a little bit of care in cleaning. This, of course, is the bullet exit side, and this is what's called the breech, or the chamber side. The breech and the chamber are the area that the bullet is going to come up in as it's coming out of the magazine and go up in there. So from an external perspective, you want to make sure that there's no burrs or scarring that's beginning to form on this, or that the edges have looked like they've been marred. If they do, that probably means something with your ammunition, or possibly something inside of your gun is grinding up against that, and you need to look at that immediately, because once you just begin to destroy the ramp, which is this part of it, you're going to have some big problems. Cleaning a barrel otherwise is fairly easy. First thing I normally do is I take these lug areas, I brush them out to get any excess dirt or grime that may have built up in there, any of the kind of angled surfaces here. Again, this part of the barrel and this part of the barrel, and I generally put a little bit here, are the areas you're going to lube it when we talk about lubing in a moment. So you may need to take a little hoppies soaked rag and run it through here to get any gunk that's building up from the oil. And you can do that by just, you know, taking that, run it through there a couple of times, take a clean rag, run it up through there a couple of times, brush it off, make sure it's out. The outside of the barrel in general needs to be free and clean. I'd go ahead and get any excess oil off of it with some hoppies or some other solvent. And then what you want to focus on is cleaning the inside of that barrel out. The inside of that barrel is what's going to get most gunked up, because you have lots of bullets, and as those bullets explode and exit the barrel, all that gas and discharge is going down that barrel and it's coating it. And there's a lot of friction, a lot of wear, a lot of dirty stuff going down in there. So you fill it full of oil, right? Wrong. A lot of people like to oil their barrels. That's one area that I don't do. I clean a barrel, I leave it dry. Unless I'm going to put that barrel up for a long time, the gun may be sitting in my gun closet, which case I'll take a very lightly oiled rag and run back through there. But let's talk about how we clean the inside of that barrel. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to run a brush down through that barrel once or twice. Okay? Just run it down through there and make sure that all the big dirt and grime is out of that barrel. Then I want to take my hoppy soaked rag, so I would take some of my hoppies and I want to soak this rag down. And so I don't have a big mess here. I'm not going to do that today. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to run it down the barrel and make sure a couple of times, and I'll turn it inside out so I'm not running the same gunk down there. And again, I've soaked that in hoppies and I'm going to push that down through the barrel. Okay, until I've got a good coating of hoppies in there, okay? And then I'll normally take my brush one more time and just run it down through there. Now, a lot of people have a theory of you only run a brush in one direction, you take it off and you run back. Pistol barrels are pretty short. You're not building up gunk in the middle of that barrel like you might do with a rifle barrel. So it's pretty safe to run that back and forth. Now, I'll take another rag that I want to soak in a little bit of hoppies. Now that I've gotten most of the gas exhaust and lead or copper fouling that may be building up in there, I'm going to run one more time down in there, and then I'm going to get me clean ones, and I'm going to run me clean patches through there until my patches come out dry. May take 2 or 3, and I'm just going to run them through there, okay? Now I've got a pretty good barrel. Last thing I normally do is I just look at my barrel and make sure that I haven't missed any fouling, that I can still see good lands in there to ensure that the barrel is in a good state of cleaning. Set that off to the side. Now we're to the slide. Again, if you run your gun not overly oiled, cleaning your slide should be as simple as taking a lightly soaked hoppies or other cleaning solvent, running it down these rails to help break up some of that previous oil, running it in this flat side of the slide right here where you have a lot of friction where that barrel is moving back and forth up through there, cleaning that out, cleaning down these channels, cleaning off the backside, cleaning the face. And then once you do that, take a clean cloth and get all that excess hoppies or cleaning solvent off. Okay, and then we're going to take our brush and brush really good. Brush really good. Now one thing, if you noticed earlier, I talked about this being a wire, no, it's not wire, being a nylon brush. Don't go grab those wire brushes because a wire brush will actually take some of the surface off of these guns and you don't want to do that. Use a nylon brush. You want to clean all those out, make sure all your entry and exit points are cleaned out. I normally just brush off the outside. This is actually the extractor part of the gun. I make sure that there's no dirt inside of there. I normally go over the firing pin hole right there and make sure there's nothing stopping that. And then we're ready to lube our gun and reassemble it. Now, the way I lube my gun is I take all 4 of these parts and sometimes the magazine and I drop them in a bucket of oil. And I leave them there for 2 days. And then I just reassemble them and I go out and shoot them. And if you do that, you're going to have gun oil slinging all in your face for the rest of your life. I'm saying that to be exaggerative because there are a lot of people that way over oil their Glocks. To oil a Glock is really simple. There's not a whole bunch of places that you oil a Glock. The primary places that you want to oil the Glock is this flat surface right here, the slide rails, the lug in this area right here, the barrel in general you want a light thin coat of oil on because remember that barrel's going back and forth and it's building up a lot of friction, plus it just has a lot of heat on it, okay? And then the last place that you're going to oil is right in here. Some people also put a little bit of, just a dab will do you oil right there on the top of that crucible, okay? Those are the places you're going to oil, and that's it. And it doesn't take a lot of oil. You don't put oil in the firing pin hole. You don't put oil in any of these cracks and crevices. You don't go pouring oil down in here. As I said, I run my barrels mostly dry unless they're going to be in storage, and then it's a super, super, super light coating of oil that I might put in that barrel for long-term storage. You don't pour oil all over these parts. Again, one more time. There's 4 places you put your oil. Right here, and you just smear it out nice and even across there. Normally, I just put a drop on each of these rails and set the rail off to the side on something and let it just guide its way down. And that's just a small drop. I'll take an oil-soaked rag and I'll run right through here. Okay. I'll take that same oil-soaked rag and I'll wipe the barrel down so that it has a thin coat of oil on it. And then I take a drop of oil and I put it right there on the crucible. And I'm done with my Glock. So if we do that, we've got a well-oiled Glock. Now, I also occasionally, on some of my competition guns, because I know they're going to be shooting a lot of rounds, I may use a little bit of gun grease like this. Gun grease just has a little bit thicker viscosity. When you're shooting for a long day, it's hot, that viscosity will hold on to those parts and not disintegrate as quickly. You have to be careful when you use a gun oil like this or gun grease like this, because as you can see, it's pretty thick and it's really easy to get a big glob on there and start globbing everything down. But I'm going to take this one and I'm going to actually lubricate this Glock with this gun grease properly to show you what I'm talking about. Now notice that's just a dab. And that dab is going to do me for my slide rails and for this front part of my Glock here. So I went in, I put a dot in there, and then I ran up and down my side rails. Now, if I use gun grease like this, because I'm using a Q-tip, I can't get down in those slide rails really good. So I actually take a little bit of this, just a small smidgen amount, and to make sure that I get down in those rails, I put it on the outside surfaces of these guides right here, because those will actually be running through those rails and they'll actually lubricate it for me. And I smear it all down in the inside there and get that all lubricated. Then I can take this same small amount of grease, run it right in that lug surface right there. And if I want to take a little bit of that grease, run it up and down that barrel like that until it's nice and thinly greased all over that surface, and I can run my fingers over it to make sure. And then back to my receiver, I put a little bit on these slide rails so that it would go through there. And then I just put a very small dab on the crucible right there, and we're good to go. And that is proper cleaning of your Glock. I'm Luke Stevens. This is TheGaGG.com.